Good morning. Nice to see you're all awake. My talk is called The World's Most Boring Build System. It's about build systems, it's about Unix, it's about JavaScript, the old and the new. It's specifically not the world's most boring talk about build systems, I hope. We'll see how we get on. So that's me. My name's Jezen. I look like that on the internet. I also look like that in real life. I know it's hard to believe, but it's based on a true story. That's my Twitter handle, so you can find me afterwards online and tell me that I'm wrong. Just before we get going, how many programmers are there here? Programmers? Lots of programmers. Hey, like everyone. And how many of you are mostly front-end? Lots of front-end. Back-end? Both? Oh, advanced. None. Neither. Any mavericks? No, we're all nerds here. Great. Excellent. Okay, this will be a bit interactive just to wake you all up. Does anyone know what that is? Anyone? Everyone knows what that is. This is Grunt.js. It's a build system. It's a JavaScript build system. It reads and writes to and from the disk, so it's kind of slow, because we know that every time that we read and write from the disk, we're wasting a lot of cycles. Just like when you interact with the DOM, that's also very slow, or when you're writing to a database, it's slow. But it did at least get us somewhere with automating our JavaScript tasks. Because before that, I don't know, you were pushing things with FTP and manually compiling stuff a bunch of years ago. So this got us somewhere, but it had some problems which we solved with this thing. Does everyone know what this is? Lots of hands? Fewer hands, but lots of hands. It's kind of given away because the name's written there. This is Gulp.js. It's also a JavaScript build system. It's kind of like Grunt on steroids. It fixes the problem of reading and writing into the disk because it uses a thing called pipes. So it just streams data through different programs to build your source files into something that you ship to people. So this is a JavaScript thing called a pipe that we needed to invent for some reason. I think this is a Node.js thing. I don't really use this. I don't see the point. But it's funny to me that we had to invent this thing because we already had it for a long time. This is also a pipe. And I think most of you have seen this before. This is a pipe on the command line. You use it for exactly the same thing for streaming data from places to different places. Is my screen blue? I'm colorblind. No, okay. This is a quote by somebody, because every good talk needs a quote. And I picked this because I'm trying to ask the question, why did we reinvent the pipe? We've had this thing for so long in Unix, and then we made another one in JavaScript for some reason. And I think this is why. That's what I think. I'm not really sure who came up with this quote. It's misquoted a lot, but true anyway. This is some data in a pie chart, because every good talk needs some data. And this is a survey of about 1,000 front-end developers asking what they use day-to-day, building their projects, building their software. And it's not so many Grunt people anymore, still lots. Lots of Gulp people. And then a few people using other things that you may or may not have heard of. And then a really tiny percentage using other. A scary percentage using like nothing. Manual compilation, or I don't know. Don't go there. Does anyone know what this is? A a few nervous hands, or proud nerds, I don't know. Yeah, I know what this is. So this is make syntax, and make is a build system, like the other two. Unlike the other two, it is not written in JavaScript, so it's not very fashionable. It's not on Hacker News lately. That bottom line is probably what you shouldn't do, ever, unless you're a masochist and you want to waste a lot of time. That's not like a logo or anything. I guess when Make came out in 1977, they didn't think it was important enough to make a marketing page and a logo. This is bananas. Everyone knows bananas? Yes? Yeah, we know bananas. And in England, that's what bananas look like. We package them for some reason. We add a thin wrapper around our bananas. It's the banana that you want to get at, but for some reason you need to wrap it. I don't know. I don't think that helps you get at the banana. I don't think it protects you from anything. I am going somewhere with this. I think we do the same thing with our JavaScript stuff. I think you got the word wrapper in there. We, for some reason, write Grunt and Gulp plugins around the software that we want for very little reason. No apparent reason, I think. Like you want to use JS hint. But you can't just use the JS hint. You have to use the Grunt, Gulp, contrib, JS hint wrapper thing that someone's going to write for you, or always going to break, and then you can't fix because you need someone upstream to fix it for you. And that's one of my main gripes with a lot of the JavaScript build systems that we have. There's so many wrappers around stuff, just unnecessarily. It's extra complexity in your system that you just don't need. It's like thousands of lines of JavaScript that don't need to exist. And we know that code is a liability, all of it. We want to just delete as much as we can, but for some reason still we insist on wrapping the stuff that we want unnecessarily. Anyone hungry? This is a problem. I've seen this in the wild. I don't know what that problem is. Probably some of you do know what it is. But that's also kind of hard to Google. So if you're a front-end web developer, you're sitting on a project, you're building some stuff for clients, you type in Grunt because some other person on your team says, oh, you should use Grunt, it fixes all the things. And you type this in, and it just explodes. You just go, wow, what now? This doesn't help you much. And this, I think, will just ruin your day, and you don't want to be a sad programmer. This is some code. I know that you all like code. This is a Grunt task for copying files, because you often want to copy files around. Copying files is a really simple thing to do. It's a solved problem. We know how to copy files. But there's so much there, and you really have to read everything to understand what that's doing. That's, what, 10 lines of production code without the comments, I think. Not easy to scan. You know it copies files at least, because it says copy. But this is something different entirely. This is still a copying task. But in Grunt, you can, it might be Gulp, I don't know, whatever. In Grunt, you can add this function that replaces stuff. So it mutates the data in place. But I thought we were just copying. So you're a new developer to an existing project that uses this. You know that you have some task that copies stuff. And you don't realize, oh, it's also doing mutation. It's also changing things on the spot. And should a copying task really mutate as well? This kind of ruins that single responsibility principle that we take pretty seriously. This is a copying task as well. But that's how you copy stuff on the shell. And I know it's a bit of a straw man. I showed you like lots of code and then like nothing. So you can tell me I'm wrong later. But this is, if you want to copy stuff on your machine, that'll work. Every time. It's dead simple. Just the CP for copy command, and then the stuff you want to copy, and the place you want to copy it to. And if you don't know how this works, or if you don't know how anything works on a Unix system, you can read the manual. Because your machines, provided you use a sane machine, like a Unix machine, Macs, lots of Macs here, and then some Linux people as well. If you use Windows, don't know, sorry. With Grunt tasks for copying and stuff like that, you have to like go online, go on GitHub, hope that someone wrote some reasonable documentation. With this, you have proper documentation. And you don't need to download this. You all already have this. This is another Grunt task. And this does something that you all probably want to do if you're writing JavaScript. It's a wrapper around JS and that's not very difficult to understand. But the point here is that we're still using a wrapper because it seems for some reason we're afraid of accessing JS directly and then just passing it the files you want as arguments. Or maybe we don't know where to find it. Maybe you think, okay, it has to be, you have to install it without NPM. You don't. You can still have it as a node module and access it directly like this. Most things that you install with NPM give you some binary in the node module /.bin directory. And you would use that just like any other shell script. So you prefix it with a dot, or maybe you can say source. I think you say source, I'm not sure. It works like that. And this also comes with really good documentation, like command line flag style documentation stuff. Man, as for manual, doesn't work there because it's not a thing installed on your systems already. But with most things like this on the command line, you can try --help, and it gives you some help. So I was talking about make, and I'm sure you're wondering how to get started. This is how you get started. You touch the file. That will just create an empty file called makefile. Just like you have a Grunt file or a Gulp file, they take that naming convention from make. And you do this in the root of your project. So you just like cd, change directory into the project that you're working with, and you touch yourself a makefile. Whoa. No, that's not touch yourself. You touch a makefile in that directory. So it ends up looking something like this. This is a project that I worked on recently, making a 3D slice of cheese. I get weird requests sometimes. You can see right in the root of the project, I have this makefile. And then I can use the make command from that directory, and it'll run whatever tasks I have set up. This is a bare bones make file. I'll go through it line by line. At the top, I'm appending a directory to my path, because in the shell you always have the path where you tell the system where it can find things. And I've added the node modules.bin directory to the path so that I can access browserify by name, that last line, rather than saying node modules.bin/browserify, because I want to use a lot of things from the node modules.bin directory. Also, if you're using makefiles, I really suggest that you set the shell correctly. Use bash, because it's more sane. Actually, because you might start writing some bash stuff in the makefile, and if you don't set the shell like this, then it'll use sh by default, and that's, yeah. People are more used to bash, I think. Okay, and then under that third line, that's a task, and the name of the task is my target that I'm building. So I work for this company called UXPin, and I'm building some uxpin.js file in the public directory. And I'm saying that this depends on all the JSX files under editor/JS. So I've described a relationship between the stuff that my source, the stuff that I'm writing, and the stuff that it compiles into. What's really nice about this is that make is lazy by default, and it like checks timestamps of when you modify stuff. So if I run make and then I choose this target, it won't just keep running those tasks unnecessarily. If I didn't edit any of the files that I've listed as a dependency, then it will just do nothing. It'll say nothing to do, and it'll stop. So this task, all it does is it makes a directory called public, and then it runs browserify with my entry point, which is that app.jsx file, and then I'm saying my output is this $@ symbol. I think in Poland you call it monkey, małpa, right? $@ symbol is a make file thing, and that refers to the target name. So that just desugars to public/uxpin.js. There are a few more make file specific things, but you can figure them out because you know the man command for the manual, so you can do man make, and you learn more that way. I mentioned that make is lazy, and this is what it tells you if there's nothing to do when you're building stuff. By the way, you'll notice that those two last lines are indented in make. One thing that you should know about make is that it only understands tabs, so no spaces. So that ends the tabs versus spaces war shortly. Stay back. Cool. So this is a task that you often have in any project where you want to like delete stuff. rm is the command for deleting things, and then I'm doing it recursively and I'm forcing everything. So I'm just blowing out that entire public directory. So I would write make clean from the command line, and it would just do that stuff that I want it to do. But what's interesting about this is because I mentioned that the name of the task should be something that you build normally, like a file that exists or a directory. And in this case, there's no file or directory in my project called clean, so it's going to get confused. So you have to add this .phony rule, and then, or target, I guess you could say. And you can just add all of your tasks that don't represent real files as dependencies for the phony target. That's pretty much all I got on make. So thanks a lot. We got some minutes for questions. Do we have any questions? Yes.
How would you resolve live editing and compiling stuff during your editing?
Okay, yeah, right. So normally in a lot of projects that use Grunt and Gulp, you have some like Grunt watch task that watches for changes and then compiles live. But this works here as well, because make will just run anything that you can run from the shell. Actually, so the example I had before was for browserify. I was using browserify to compile some JavaScript files, but that comes with a thing called watchify, which also just, you run it in the background and it will watch files and compile on the fly as well. Normally what I do when I'm developing is I don't have lots of terminal windows open. I'll just have one. And I'll have some task that does watch for changes on my source files, and I'll prefix that with no hup, which is no hang up, I think. So I'll do no hang up, and then make watch, and then ampersand to run that in the background. But you can write shell stuff mostly, not exactly, because it's not really a bash script, a makefile, but you can run most stuff there. So anything you can run from the command line, you can also run from there. While I'm on that topic, actually, if you find yourself writing a lot of bash in your makefile, don't. You should then delegate tasks out to shell scripts. And so you could have some directory in your project that's just called scripts or utils or whatever, and then you stick a bunch of shell scripts in there. Each script does one thing, and then in your task, you delegate out to that shell script. Does that answer it? I hope I answered the question. Yeah? In a very roundabout way. Oh, I got the timer working.
Okay, so you have two types of targets, like those phony and those which are file names.
Yes.
And those which are file names should refer to what? To file that we are building or we, taking from?
Yeah, exactly. So that would be your build target, which could be some like C binary that you're compiling. It could be some like ES6 JavaScript that you've built. So your dependency would be the ES6 stuff, and you transpile it into the ES5 normal stuff. It doesn't have to exist on the system. If it does exist on the system and it hasn't been changed since you last ran the target, then it won't do anything. If it doesn't exist, it will create it, and it will compile into there.